It's a rising star of our stay-at-home times, and as Martha Teichner tells us, the proud accomplishment of many an amateur baker.
On the violin, Bridget Bibbins really cooks. Or did until March. She was halfway through a nationwide tour with a rock band when COVID-19 shut the country down. Suddenly, she found herself stuck at home near Austin, Texas.
I'd made that first dreadful trip to the grocery store when everything was out and we couldn't get bread.
Who hasn't seen those empty shelves?
Fortunately, I had about a half a bag of flour left in the freezer.
Bridget Bibbins went from cooking to baking. Bread, something new for the transplanted New Yorker.
When I was a city girl, I kept shoes in my oven.
You what?
Never used it. I was such a Carrie Bradshaw. I had too many shoes and I had lots of takeout options.
With commercial yeast really hard to find, like hordes of bored and newly cost-conscious Americans, Bibbins decided to make her own sourdough, which starts out as nothing more than flour and water set out to ferment and grow. Just like Audrey, the voracious plant in Little Shop of Horrors. Feed me all night long. Sourdough starters demand to be fed more and more flour.
Here you can see she's bubbling up, she's getting ready.
And they have names. Take a look.
Her name is Diane von Yeastenberg. I love fashion. Diane von Furstenberg is timeless and classic, as is a good sourdough.
We hear a lot of Lazarus because people think it's dead and then it comes back. Baker's Hotline, this is Amanda. How can I help you?
Amanda Schlarbaum gets a lot of sourdough questions.
I made a batch of sourdough starter.
She is one of 15 experts taking calls on King Arthur Flour's Baker's Hotline.
This time of year, things usually slow down, but right now our calls have gone up quite a bit. Our emails have also doubled, if not tripled. I think you could get away with using it for cookies, quick breads, and we're receiving around 350 calls a day.
King Arthur says it's selling twice as many bags of flour as it did in December, a big holiday baking month. Yeast sales are up more than 600% over a year ago. Why do you think that people suddenly want bread at a time like this?
It's comforting. Bread is one of the most comforting and nurturing of foods. What aroma, Martha, causes us to, in a Pavlovian way, salivate immediately?
Before coronavirus, Jim Lahey's Sullivan Street Bakery in New York City was supplying more than 300 restaurants. Now, it's down to a half dozen.
We were doing, I think, 25 oven loads of bread a day. Now we're averaging 2. Yeah. So I'm going to whisk this starter up.
Lahey's no-knead bread recipe has become a home cook's classic. During troubling times, creating edible art is a magic trick worth knowing.
I just like that it's so simple. I like that it's 4 ingredients: flour, water, salt, and yeast.
For Dr. Craig Spencer, baking bread is everything the rest of his life is not. He is an emergency room doctor in New York City.
When I walked in about a month ago, it felt like the apocalypse. In an emergency department where normally we'd have 30 patients, there were over double that. It was unlike anything that I'd seen. And I've worked in West Africa during Ebola.
In 2014, Spencer survived Ebola himself and feels uniquely qualified to treat coronavirus. But
it's hard to take care of patients all day. It's even harder to do so when you're afraid you're going to get infected, and even harder to do so when you're doing it in goggles and in masks and in gloves. That is tough. What's even harder is the mental exhaustion that comes.
Which is why, The bread Dr. Craig Spencer bakes for his family to eat
Is that good bread?
nourishes him more.
Bread is something that we can control. In the hospital, one thing that's been so frustrating for so many of us is that there is not a treatment, there's not a cure. This is today's creation. I think bread is this release from the stress that we feel every single day.
That is beautiful.
Thanks.
It's got a heartbeat.
Yeah, exactly.
This portion of Sunday Morning is sponsored by Sleep Number.